Good morning and welcome to Wednesday, April 3rd, 2024. This is Up North News Radio. I'm Pat Rightlow here in Chippewa Falls, where the wind is a howling like it is throughout much of the state today. The eastern part still dealing with that winter storm system. We're over here on the outskirts of it, which is not fun either, but there is a warm up in the forecast, and we'll check in with Brittany Merlot later to talk about that. We have a lot of election results to share from you, truly a mixed bag of results that we will talk about. We have our weekly climate check with Melissa Baldoff, and in this week's visit, we're going to talk about a summer of rebates, all the money that's coming back to Wisconsin residents who make energy improvements in their homes or in their garages. We'll talk about things that will bring relief to the climate while reducing energy bills. In our second hour, we'll talk to folks from the Wisconsin Public Education Network about that mixed bag of results and especially what's going to happen in those communities where friends and neighbors rejected pleas for help from the school district to raise the funds needed just to continue the current operations that go on in all of these districts. And Todd Alba continues his statewide road tour here in the Chippewa Valley. We'll check in with him as well. So a lot to cover coming up in just over 4 minutes at 6:06 when our show begins on the Civic Media Radio Network. We'll see you soon. Here we go.
All across Wisconsin from Civic Media, this is Up North News Radio. Now, live from our Lake Wissota studio, here's the founding editor of Up North News, Pat Brightlow.
If you can hear me over the howling wind, hey there, Wisconsin. Good morning. It is 6:06 on this Wednesday morning, April 3rd. Another, I have to use finger quotes today, beautiful day to have you here up north, live from Lake Wissota, where it's cold, it's windy. We've been enduring this winter storm in the springtime, but wherever you're listening across the Civic Media Radio Network, through the app, social media, or by podcast, we just hope you're driving safely out there. And again, there will be a warm-up. Spring is not too far away. Just got to hang in there a little bit longer. I got a question for you on this Wednesday. Do you appreciate how much work still lies ahead of us between now and November 5th? Because based on former President Trump's hateful screed in Green Bay last evening and some of last night's election results, there is still a lot of work to be done to remind our friends and neighbors not to abandon the angels of our better nature and the policies that are actually working for Wisconsin families, American businesses, and so on. So we'll talk all about that in and out throughout the show today, especially in our second hour with our friends from the Wisconsin Public Education Network, talking about the truly mixed bag of results that came in yesterday. But we'll cover more of that in the next couple of minutes here as well. Also ahead is our weekly climate check with Melissa Baldoff coming up in about 25 minutes or so. And we're going to talk about how it's basically going to be a summer of rebates. Again, when I talk about the policies that work for Wisconsin, I'm talking in this case about the Inflation Reduction Act and the investment in energy efficiency and the nearly $150 million that's going to come back to Wisconsin residents who make energy improvements in their homes or in their garages. And we'll review some of the options that can bring relief to the climate while also reducing your energy bill. And we'll talk to Todd Alba, who is on the road statewide, and his show comes to the Chippewa Valley later today. So we will visit with him about that as well. It's normally where I whip around the state and tell you what the temperatures are here, but given all the election results and sports results I was plugging in and everything, I can tell you it's 36 degrees up here on Lake Wissota. And other temperatures can't be far off it, including whatever the temperature is, whatever undisclosed temperature readout it says right now in Waukesha, Wisconsin, where we find Greg Bach standing by. Mr. Bach, do you have a thermometer there?
I do.
Oh, good. Don't make that face. he's like, I know a secret. How are things down there?
Down in Waukesha, it's windy, it is cold, and it's not like it's snowing, but it's not snowing. It's snowy. Mm-hmm. It's more annoying than anything. But yeah, it's chilly out. It's chilly out, which, happy April 3rd.
Yep. But
to all who celebrate.
Hopefully. Yes.
Yeah, it's I looked at the forecast for the next few days, and we're gonna get to spring, and
oh yeah,
I'm not that worried. I will say, just really quick, I was looking at the Kenosha election results, and one county board seat was decided by a vote.
A vote.
Mm-hmm.
See, every vote matters. Your vote matters there. How was the home opener for the Brewers Twins game?
Oh my God, Pat, it was perfect. I mean, okay, so I'll make this very quick. It was raining, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And we knew that. We could see outside raining. Got to the parking lot. They had that new parking system in place. They got rid of the old system where you pay someone before you get in. You get a scan and that system crashed.
Yep.
And about halfway through the game, they put up a big thing on the new 12,000 square foot sign, well, almost 13,000 square foot sign.
Mm-hmm.
That said, everyone gets free parking.
Yay!
Christian Yelich hit a banger. Jackson Cherio came out. I mean, I wanted Jackson to hit a home run. I really wanted Willie Adames to hit a home run, but he didn't. But Jackson did great. The whole team did great. There was an energy and a vibe. The team won. We had a great time. It was really, it was a nice home opener.
How about for all of the reasons to cheer during the game? How about that cheer when Bob Uecker was introduced?
Oh my gosh, yeah. And
Man.
I love Bob Uecker. I grew up with Bob Uecker. He's the voice of the Brewers always and forever.
Mm-hmm.
But I just want to be like, hey Brewers, can you do me a solid? Can you win a World Series this year? So because he'll retire the moment it happens.
Oh yeah, of course.
And I'm just nervous because he's 90.
Mm-hmm. 90 and now starting his 54th season broadcasting Brewers baseball. There was a sellout crowd there, 41,658 plus Greg. And Jackson Chourio singled in a run in his first plate appearance. It was with the bases loaded, but all he did was he just kept the merry-go-round going because there were already one-out singles by Rhys Hoskins, Oliver Dunn, Bryce Terang. So Jackson Chourio steps up and gets a single as well with an RBI. So that's a good omen because again, your Milwaukee Brewers 4-0 right now.
4-0, and I can't believe the Pirates are 5-0. Like that is a massive turnaround between seasons.
Mm-hmm.
But all those analytics that are out there, having our guys on Matt and Aaron on here talking about sports, they're all saying the same thing. They have us finishing really close to the bottom or at the bottom. Like, let's do this.
Yeah,
let's
absolutely.
do this.
Please do it. Do it for Uke, if nothing else. Meanwhile, while we're covering sports here at 6:12, the Wizards beat the Bucks last night 117-113, despite Giannis getting another triple-double, 35 points, 15 boards, and 10 assists. But Milwaukee, from three-point range, shot 11 of 48, which, as you know, I am not Mr. Three-Pointer. I'd be fine if it went away tomorrow, and I can't imagine the frustration if I'd have watched that game and watched the Bucks miss 37 different three-point shots. The Bucks are now 18-20 on the road, but they're still in second place in the Eastern Conference, and they're back home tonight. They will host the Memphis Grizzlies. The broadcast starts at 6:30 on Oshkosh Air Support, News from the Center and Richland Center, Lake Air and Amory, WRJN and Racine, and locally grown radio in Wisconsin Rapids. As for the Brewers, they continue their series against the Twins. Game 2. First pitch is at 12:10 this afternoon at American Family Field. The broadcast starts at 11:35 this morning on News from the Center, WRJN in Racine, Oshkosh Air Support, and 98Q Country in Park Falls. All those stations on the Civic Media Radio Network that cover sports for you so well throughout the day, throughout the course of the year. It's about 6:14 right now. Let's talk just a little bit about some of the results from last night. Like I said, it was truly a mixed bag of results. And I'm going to start by saying that the mayor's race in Wausau continues a depressingly familiar cycle where progressives solve problems, then they get criticized for what it costs to solve those problems. Conservatives promise to spend less money. They then get elected. They typically do a poor job addressing problems or don't address them at all. Then progressives come back in to fix them, which costs money, and then they get dinged in the next election, and so on and so on. So Katie Rosenberg, despite 4 admirable years in helping the city face one of its biggest crises of our time, was unseated by a 52-48 margin to Doug Dinney in the mayor's race. In the Milwaukee Public Schools referendum, that measure passed 51-49. Other measures passed, like here in Chippewa Falls, but in many smaller communities, their schools now face some terrible cuts after their neighbors rejected pleas for help, not to engage in any new major projects, but simply to continue the cost of operations after over a decade of being choked by a Republican-led legislature. So now we wait and see what the next legislature will do and see if they'll do right by public education in this state. Now, people will say that there were a noteworthy number of votes in the Democratic presidential primary that were not cast for Joe Biden. I would kindly remind people that about double that number voted in the Republican presidential primary for anyone other than Donald Trump. He does not have serious levels of support in this state. All national polling shows it to be basically a toss-up at 46-46 right now. But again, 46-46 only gets you to 92. There's probably not 8% that's going to go third party or independent or something else. So that number is very much in play. And as Greg mentioned with the Kenosha School District, or in the Kenosha area, where one county board seat was decided by one vote, your votes are really going to count in this presidential race and everything else. The proposed constitutional amendments passed, which again only underscores the need for what we do at Up North News and at Civic Media, and that is to inform people to look beyond just the surface talking points. That when people are talking about, Zuckerbucks and private money, what does that mean? And we're able to explain to our listeners and to our readers exactly what that means. And again, how the legislature is underfunding the cost to hold a competent election. But clearly that's a message that still needs to get out to more people. And in fact, I think when we talk to Melissa Baldoff in a bit, we're going to say the same thing about the Inflation Reduction Act, which is going to make tremendous investments in energy efficiency. It's going to lower people's household bills. It's going to be better for the climate. But the number of people who are aware of the Inflation Reduction Act and what it does is still far too low. And when people, who are supporters of President Biden say, how are more people not aware of all of the good things that got passed in the first half of his term and the good that it's going to do to people? That's a fair question. That's a question that the president's campaign team is going to have to work on. And Melissa's going to tell us more about how some of that work has got to be done knocking on one door at a time to let people know about the benefits that are out there that one side has been working toward on your behalf. Unfortunately, however, we've got to deal with people, including the former president, who are making, I can't even call them, shameful would be almost a compliment of how to describe the things that Donald Trump said yesterday, first in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and then here in Green Bay last evening. So coming up in just a moment, we'll play some of his remarks, false as they may be or ugly as they may be, because then we're also going to hear from a couple of folks who attended Trump's rally in Green Bay. And again, when you hear what they have to say, it comes back to my original question. Do you appreciate how much work needs to be done between now and November 5th? We'll cover that. So much more yet ahead on this Wednesday morning, wherever you're listening across Wisconsin. When you're here, you're up north. Back in a bit, live from Lake Wissota on the Civic Media Radio Network.
Bomb 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 dang 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 ding it on ding blue moon 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 blue moon dip 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 moon moon moon.
The number one song this day in 1961 by the Marcells. More coming up in today's history lesson about a half hour from now. If you want to reach us, the phone number is 855-75-CIVIC. Again, 855-75-CIVIC. You can call it. You can text it. You can put comments on our Facebook page where you can watch us do the show live Always great to hear from you from wherever you're listening around Wisconsin on this Wednesday morning. The Up North News Daily newsletter comes out about 5 a.m. every day, and Christina Laurie puts that together for us. And in today's, I was just scrolling through today's right now, we've got some takeaways from spring election results. We've got 11 Wisconsin schools that dominate national rankings in some form or another, and then a commentary from me on what's next now that this spring presidential primary, spring general election is over. A reminder that we're not on pause till next November. There will be a primary election in August for the November ballot. That will include places like the 3rd Congressional District in western and central Wisconsin, where there currently are 3 Democratic candidates seeking to challenge Republican Derek Van Orden. Who will be that nominee? It depends on who shows up to the polls coming up this August. So be aware of that, and be aware that, again, if you think you're going to forget about the August primary, then go ahead and apply now to get absentee ballots sent to you for the August and November elections. Go to myvote.wi.gov, and you'll find out the option to have that happen for you. Before I get to Trump, let me revisit again the Wausau mayor's race, where Katie Rosenberg was upset by Doug Denny, a city council member. And I've already stated, basically, again, how the cycle works with, progressive versus conservative leadership. But I can't let it go without as well making note of some of the other things that were said during the race. There's, for example, State Senator Corey Tomczyk, the person who is trying to sue a news outlet out of business. Despite his lawsuit being thrown out of court, he's continuing to appeal and rack up legal costs, trying to draw the Wausau Pilot and Review out of business. He also said recently that Katie Rosenberg, the mayor, should be an actress because she's, quote, always so emotional. And that's the kind of rhetoric that we've been putting up with for far too long. But there's also this from the chairman of the state Republican Party, Brian Schimming, who said, congratulations to Republican-backed Doug Denny on his triumph in the Wausau mayoral election. His stunning victory over incumbent Mayor Katie Rosenberg marks an unmistakable repudiation of failed Democrat policies and is a win for central Wisconsin values. Never minding the attempt to make Democrat a pejorative of Democratic if you refuse to use the correct word. But again, what we're saying here is the weight of the Wisconsin Republican Party getting involved in mayoral elections and school board elections, in other elections that for all of our lifetime had been nonpartisan. People will say, well, Democratic parties are involved. They are now. They are now because for several cycles past, everybody looked askance at the Republicans and said, you're not supposed to be involved in this. And finally, enough Democratic parties at the state and county level said, okay, I guess this is how we're doing this now. And so these races have become partisan, and the amount of outside dark money that came in through Republican circles to smear Katie Rosenberg is rather telling. But it took that much of an effort to convince just enough voters to go in a different direction in that 52-48 race. There was equally sleazy behavior down in Milwaukee, where in one case, a landlord sent an email to all of his tenants threatening a rent hike if the Milwaukee Public School referendum were to pass. Now, while that's not patently illegal, it's illegal for an employer to dictate to an employee how to vote or to threaten their job, if they don't vote a certain way. It's not illegal for a landlord to send an email like this threatening rent increases if they happen to support a referendum, or maybe in the future it'll be a candidate that they don't like. These are the kinds of things that, again, should be called out. Even if they're not illegal, they're certainly wrong, and people should call attention to it and, let others know that we're better than that in this country. Well, at least we should be. Which brings us to the former president. Here's a couple of things that he had to say yesterday in Michigan. These audio clips are from Michigan, but he said many of the same things a couple of hours later in Green Bay. Here's him basically making a threat in Michigan that if he doesn't win, there's not going to be any more elections in the United States.
Because if we don't win on November 5th, I think our country is going to cease to exist. It could be the last election we ever have. I actually mean that. We don't win. I think this could be the last election we ever have. That's where our country's going.
Now, this is
if
what
we don't win on November 5th, I think
this is what he's saying. He's saying to his supporters, you go ahead and engage in violence after November 5th if I don't win. That's what that is. That is a flat out encouragement, appealing to us, a subset of people who just listen to this next comment. And again, we're talking about a country that desperately needs immigration reform. And there was a chance to get it, and Donald Trump killed it because he still wants to use rhetoric like this when describing migrants.
the Democrats say, please don't call them animals. They're humans. I said, no, they're not humans. They're not humans. They're animals.
They're not humans. They're animals. That's where fascism starts to lay an anchor and build a foundation, if we listen to words like that. But of course, closer to home, as people gave their pregame addresses prior to Trump's appearance in Green Bay, you get comments like this by Congressman Tom Tiffany.
In Joe Biden's America, he has a Department of Agriculture that has they have an agency, the Civil Rights, Diversity, and Inclusion Agency. You know, I think back to when I was a kid growing up on the farm. Diversity used to mean when we'd have Jerseys and Guernseys along with our Holsteins. I remember inclusion used to
right in there, in that soundbite right there, is the ugliness of somebody who's grown up amongst nothing but white people, who sees that anybody else is different. And for him, diversity isn't something to be celebrated and to be encouraged, but to be compared to farm animals. That's Tom Tiffany. And you heard all those people booing with a mindset that has to be addressed, because right now they think that they are victims because people that were underrepresented and repressed for generations are suddenly not being so oppressed any longer. And I'm going to play one clip about somebody talking about their 401k at the rally. This is why they supported Trump, and you'll have to forgive there's some wind noise in the middle of it, but give a listen to this.
Who is the only person who can continue to allow us to buy gas-powered cars in 2030?
No, I'm sorry. That's Glenn Grothman. We'll get to it in another segment where somebody talks about how their 401k has still not recovered from the post-COVID recession, and that somehow that's Joe Biden's fault. Folks, we've got the best economy in the world that had a comeback from the pandemic recession. Best in the world. Not perfect, still room to grow, but if your 401k hasn't made it back then, you need to talk to your money manager, because we're at a stock market that's been at all-time highs for weeks, if not months. But again, if Donald Trump tells enough people the economy's bad and migrants are animals, too many folks, sadly, are going to believe these untrue things to be true. Our climate check is next. You're up north.
And when I look, the moon is there. It's electric.
And we're back now on Up North News Radio with our friend Melissa Baldoff, who gives us our weekly climate check, talking about more visits to Wisconsin from VIPs and using climate and energy and savings on your home budget as the foundation of this week's visit. Melissa, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing well. How about you?
Very good, thanks. Now, of course, we all know Wisconsin is this very pivotal state in the presidential election. You've certainly seen it from the Biden campaign with all the visits by the president, the vice president, the first lady, cabinet officers. Biden's coming back to Wisconsin next week, Monday. But his energy secretary was in the state recently, and that's what we're going to focus on today because, again, from a pocketbook standpoint, there's a lot that the administration has done, and yet, as we seem to say quite regularly, Melissa, it's like they can't do too much when it comes to promoting the Inflation Reduction Act and the way that it is saving people money.
Yeah, absolutely. This is something where I think we're just going to continue to see good news and positive news as people understand more about the savings that are available and start to realize those savings because, I think in the past and even still, right? I think there are any number of people who want to make choices that are good for the environment, that are, going to help transition to that clean energy economy. But costs can be prohibitive, right? It's not always easy and accessible to do the thing that is the right thing and that the thing is that you want to do. These are decisions that come down to a family's bottom line. And what we're seeing with the Inflation Reduction Act is it makes it so much easier for families and small businesses, for schools, for any number of entities to make those environmentally smart decisions without hurting their bottom line and without it being, economically prohibitive.
Yeah, the last time around that we talked about this, we talked about things being done at the utility level scale, and that utilities were going to be using union labor for some of these big projects in terms of energy generation and distribution. So now we're coming back down to the, by and large, the household level or maybe the small business level. And I would recommend for folks, there's an article in the Wisconsin Examiner that really takes the energy secretary, former Michigan Governor Jennifer Granholm, and her 2-day tour around Wisconsin. And it included, Governor Tony Evers and Congressman Mark Pocan accompanying her. And in one case, visiting a home where, again, new windows, not the sexiest thing, but a massive savings on your energy bill. That's sexy, Melissa.
It is, and we replaced our windows not that long ago, last year, and have definitely seen. No, it's 2 years ago now, and have definitely seen that we're experiencing a reduction in energy costs. So I think that is something that people feel. Absolutely, it's difficult and at this time of year to open up the utility bill or pay it online, however people do it, and you see that number, and anything you can do to bring that number down is really important. And I really appreciated Secretary Granholm, talking about the summer of rebates coming up, and I think that's a really smart way to think about it. This is going to be money that is coming back to people in Wisconsin and across the country. They're going to be, replacing windows, updating their appliances, all kinds of things that are going to help them save a lot of money on those energy bills.
Yeah, the secretary, she, according to the article here, she name checked several manufacturers of wind turbines, battery components, heat pump compressors. They're all going to benefit from provisions in the Inflation Reduction Act, the bipartisan infrastructure law, and more. But then there was this roundtable with 7 manufacturing companies that produce products that are likely to qualify for those federal rebates that you talked about to be offered later this year from the Inflation Reduction Act and provided to homeowners who replace existing home appliances with cleaner energy equipment. And this one particular homeowner saw when the energy efficient windows were done, a utility bill that went from nearly $400 a month for January a year ago down to $149 this past March. And while again, any one person's example may not be typical, I think it is pretty easy to say that for many homeowners, it's probably worth examining what these rebates are and seeing if it doesn't jumpstart some overdue work around the house.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Weatherizing, it's, up to about 30% savings. And then same thing under the Inflation Reduction Act, 30% off when you get tax credits for solar, 30% savings to buy an EV charger for your home, $7,500 if you want to buy an EV, 400 or $4,000 if you buy a used EV. So this is real money for people that is going to make a difference. And it's that I think that having these conversations at that really, granular level is so important, because when we hear things at the, that big macro level, we've talked about these huge investments, and we know that the IRA is, this generational investment. This is the biggest ever investment in climate action to give us this, net zero future. But those numbers, $9 billion in federal government rebates, that can just sound so out of reach, I think, to people. And they think, well, what is it actually going to mean for me? And so often I feel like people can get a little bit lost in that, right? And it's hard to imagine how you benefit from that. Maybe people assume, well, this is going to help big businesses. This is going to help people, with really expensive homes. This is going to help kind of the, what we've seen, what we saw under the former guy and what we've seen in the past under Republican leadership, that the relief is going to the folks at the very top and to the people who least need it. And what I think is so smart and special about the way this has been structured is that this is going to help everybody. And when we have these kinds of conversations, when you have somebody like Secretary Granholm come to Wisconsin and meet with, real people about how this is impacting them, I think knowing somebody, cut their utility bill by more than half from some of this is a lot more impactful than just hearing $9 billion. Because to me, that's so much more relatable to know what it feels like and what the impact is on that, individual level.
I think as well from a political standpoint, uh, I won't say it puts to bed, the talking point, but certainly sets it back that, anything that's done from a green energy standpoint is very expensive, and that you don't make it back, or that it's, punitive. We hear Republicans talking about, oh, your stove is going to be outlawed, and your lawnmower is going to be outlawed, and your car is going to be out, and it's silly. And the alternative is to actually show real world examples of where these kinds of investments by the public sector pay off for taxpayers in their utility bills and overall costs.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think that another thing that kind of stood out to me in you know reading about and checking out on the news about this visit and learning more about what happened in this conversation was, our friends with Wisconsin conservation voters who have been on. We've had guests before come on to talk about their work advocating for the Inflation Reduction Act, and we had Jen Giedrich on a while ago talking about their advocacy campaign, going door to door to talk about the IRA. And so, we got a little bit of a readout from them with the secretary's visit about what those conversations looked like. So they knocked on 76,000 doors last fall. They're about to kick off another 100,000. And some of their takeaways are that only about 1/3 of the residents that their canvasser spoke to had heard of the Inflation Reduction Act. But when they heard about the provisions, about the rebates, the tax credits, the technology that will save energy and reduce emissions, the support was through the roof. More than 70% of people said they liked what they heard. And that's, across the political spectrum. Didn't matter if they were Republicans or Democrats. They liked the idea of saving money and protecting the environment. And the other thing they learned is that the people who were already informed about the IRA were ready to do more. They were excited to do more, to think about how they could use those programs if they hadn't already, and how they could go about getting more credits and rebates. So I think that really underscores why it's important that we continue to have people like Secretary Granholm coming through Wisconsin, keep advocating for the IRA, because when people know about it, they really like it. Much like the Affordable Care Act, right?
I was just going to say that the parallels are striking in that you do have to explain to folks what these things are, because it is so much easier to trash something, to just say the Affordable Care Act is bad, it's socialism or whatever, and the Inflation Reduction Act spends all this money, and if you just leave it at that, people are going to go, oh yeah, okay, I can. But when they actually learn what's in these things, they see what good policy is. We always talk about the difference between politics and policy. Politics is, a necessity, but at the bottom line, you should be passing good policy. And if that's what has to be done, that, folks with Wisconsin conservation voters have to knock on 100 or 200,000 doors to get the word out, well, it might be frustrating, but in the end, it's going to pay off.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, I think that the IRA and our clean energy economy are going to continue to be at the forefront of some of these conversations that are happening as we see these, campaigns go on. I think that this will be something that President Biden and Vice President Harris and their, surrogates are going to talk about when they come to Wisconsin and when they go to other states. And knowing that the more people hear about it, the more they like it. I think it's a great message for them. I think it's a great thing for people to hear about. And I think we'll continue to have these conversations over the, next, 7 months until the election.
Now, there was another part of Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm's visit, and it was to the Milwaukee area, and talking about part of the Biden administration's energy plan, which gives financial incentives to clean energy companies that locate in economically disadvantaged areas, pay the prevailing wage, and meet some other requirements. And again, you see the attention to detail that if you're just looking at the politics, somebody's going to go, oh, this is DEI, this is CRT, this is, whatever. No, this is when you invest in communities where the government has not incentivized investments, you can actually turn around economic fortunes. And that's what they're looking to see happen with programs like this.
Yes, absolutely. And I think too, this is another example of the way that the Biden administration is listening to people in the states, in the communities who are on the ground doing this work, and helping to, take that information and use it to shape the way that programs are administered. That's also something that we saw from, the Focus on Energy program here in Wisconsin, soliciting feedback. So you've got people like Antonio Butts at Walnut Way, and his organization has done a lot of work over the years to educate, to organize, to really build community. And I think that they have, just a vitally important perspective on how to make these programs accessible and make them successful. So I really appreciate knowing that, the Biden administration and the Evers administration are listening to people who are the experts on the ground, because that's going to make these programs that much more effective.
For more about the actual visit, I would point folks to WUWM radio out of Milwaukee for their coverage of it, or go to energy.gov and learn more from a Biden administration standpoint about the things that are out there and the things that are available. Melissa Baldoff, thank you so much again. Have a great week. Talk to you soon.
Thanks. All right, bye.
When we come back, we're going to have today's history lesson and more on this Wednesday morning. Coming up next, you're Up North. Hey, Melissa.
Hello.
How are you?
I am exhausted. How are you?
I too am exhausted. How's the weather there?
Fine in here.
Mm-hmm.
That was a perfectly cut piece. Perfect.
Thank you. Did you get much snow where you are?
Yeah, we got a decent amount, but my boyfriend's out there driving in it. He said some slippery stretches, but not as bad as he thought it would be.
Okay, good. Hope you stay safe. All righty.
I hope he doesn't. I hope he falls
Stop
on
it.
an ice
Stop
rink
it.
and then
Stop it.
becomes a hockey player. I don't know. I have no idea. I'm so just tired and angry
So
right now.
contrarian.
I'm so tired and angry right now. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Oh, yep.
All right, we're coming back soon, unless the world ends. See ya.
Happy faces. Happy faces. Happy birthday, Tony Orlando.
The stars won't come out if they know that you're
Melissa K
How
from
can you
Locally
be mad
Grown.
and listen to this music?
You can't. It's Tony Orlando and Dawn. Melissa K joins us from Locally Grown Radio in Wisconsin Rapids. Melissa, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Oh, great.
Oh, see? That's the magic of Tony Orlando, who turns 80 years old today. He was born Michael Anthony Orlando Casavitas in the Hell's Kitchen neighborhood of New York City. He had a big hit in 1961 as a teenager, and then nothing happened for years and years after that. 1970, he was asked to record some vocals for this song, Candida, because the original singer didn't work out. It became a hit, and then it went on from there. I remember watching the Tony Orlando and Dawn variety. Everybody had a variety show back then, Sonny and Cher and all the others, and folks, that was just good, clean fun. Donnie and Marie, who was it? The Hanson brothers?
No. Oh, you mean the hockey players?
Not the hockey players. No. There was...
But not Hanson Mbop.
And not Hanson Mbop. It must have been the McKeans. I don't know. Time takes care of a lot of these.
Oh, Melissa, we lost him. We lost him.
He is. He's gone down the early 70s variety show rabbit hole once again.
Weren't a lot of them siblings, too?
Yes, especially say your Donnie and Marie and your other family groups, the Jacksons.
Brady's.
The Brady's.
Anderson sisters.
Oh, the Brady's. They tried having a few songs. They had a variety show. They don't all work, folks. They just don't all work. Jane Goodall is 90 years old today. Actor Alec Baldwin is 66. And here was the number one song this day in 1971 by The Temptations.
But it was just my imagination running away with me.
Well, that sounds about right for somebody whose imagination about early 70s TV seems to be running away. On this day in 1995, the Real Audio player is introduced, allowing users to stream audio over the internet for the first time. I remember getting one of those first Real Audio players and setups, and you felt like a wizard downloading music off the internet for the first time. It was just and now even that sounds like grandpa talking. There's young people that have no concept that there was once a time where there wasn't streaming of music on the internet.
Remember Napster?
Napster, of course. And
Sorry, I was a LimeWire home. Thank you very much.
Oh, Livewire. Sorry. But didn't it feel like, kind of naughty?
Felt like stealing.
Yeah, borderline criminal. It was. It was, exactly. On this day in 2000, in the court case, United States versus Microsoft was ruled to have violated antitrust law by keeping an oppressive thumb on its competitors. You see, it can be done. Maybe needs to be done again. And on this day in 2010, Apple released the first generation iPad. You remember when the iPads first came out? I mean, those were just so cool.
Way out of my price range.
When he pulled them out, he's like, "This is the iPad." I'm like, first of all, terrible name, getting it made fun of. Second of all, what are we doing, Steve? We don't have to do everything. I was a huge Apple fan at the time, and I was very, very skeptical of the iPad. Boy,
What I see now is that pretty much nearly every news anchor has one in front of them. I don't think I could do that. I would, because I'd be afraid I'd lose my place, or that it would, crap out. Much like my computer this morning took forever to fire up because it did a software. You're right in the middle of reading a news story and it gets software update. Reloading in 3, 2. I need the
Gray
paper
circle of
scripts.
death.
Yes.
they at the home opener yesterday, they had a 4-person string quartet play the national anthem, which, by the way, kind of underwhelming on the rockin' home opener of it all.
Yeah, it really was. Yeah.
But 3 of them were using iPads for their sheet music.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Yep. It's very.
Yeah, you see it all the time.
Yep. Let's see. Another birthday today. Wayne Newton, 82 years old today.
Wow.
He was a lot younger when he had hits like this one.
Melissa, what's the first thing you think of?
Darker shame, darling, darker
Oh, see, she did not watch Ferris Bueller's Day
Thank
Off.
you for
Oh, okay.
Nope.
Pat steals for the victory.
On this day in 1860, the first successful Pony Express run from St. Joseph, Missouri to Sacramento, California. And
Pat, you were there for that, right?
I
How
was,
it?
yes. I recall. And a postcard costs a penny. And one more birthday. Happy 63rd birthday to Eddie Murphy. And you're like, well, wait, what are you going to do? Play a comedy clip from Saturday Night Live? No, he tried to chart. He charted with a single as well. One of the most forgettable of all time, but let's get it stuck in your head yet again.
Oh, no.
She wants to what? Oh, okay. Yes, a lyrical triumph from Eddie Murphy. My girl wants to party all the time, party all the time, party all the time.
If you wanna shake off the doldrums of the election, go to YouTube and watch the video for this song. It has a blonde, curly-haired Rick James in it.
Oh my!
It is awful and wonderful.
Yeah, that was true 80s excess. I was doing the news on, I think, WAQE in Rice Lake at the time, which also meant you're kind of the DJ for the 5 a.m. hour as you were putting all your newscasts together.
Yeah.
And that thing would come up at 5:20 in the morning. And you're just thinking, A, this is terrible, and B, it's even worse during the 5 a.m. hour. Has no place here, but it is what we got. Today is World Cloud Security Day. I assume that's a computer thing and not related to precipitation or anything. This is National Chocolate Mousse Day, which again remains inferior to French silk. Fight me. This is National Japanese Fan Dance Day, National Film Score Day, National Tweed Day. Wouldn't that be an autumn thing when people wear like their tweed jackets, things like that? Do you have anything tweed, Melissa?
My natural hair color is tweed.
Ah, okay.
Pat, you strike me as the kind of guy who has a tweed jacket.
I have had a tweed jacket in the past. Yes, I have.
I think I have a pair of pants I would categorize as tweed.
There you go. And I'd specifically go down to the UW Eau Claire campus just to walk around in my tweed jacket in the fall with the patches on the elbows. This is National Paraprofessional Appreciation Day and National Walking Day. So,
get out there and trounce around in the snow.
Yep. Look at that. I left you all of 15 seconds to tell us what's new on locally grown radio. What should we be listening for?
Well, we had election coverage last night, and Wisconsin Rapids elected a new mayor, Matt Zacher. And I was up all night, so I don't have much else.
We're all a little, there's not a lot left in the tank there. Well, enjoy things, Melissa. Thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you next week.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
When we come back, Wisconsin Secretary of State Sarah Godlewski will be here. And later, our homeroom segment talks about the school referendums that did and didn't pass around the state. Back after this. You're Up North.
That's going to be stuck in my head all day. Thanks.
I know. You're welcome. All right. See you later.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Hey, Brittany, welcome back.
Hey, how are you doing?
Good. Hey, Sarah, see you there. I'm going to tuck you in the waiting room here till the weather report's done. I'll be right back.
Sam.
All across Wisconsin from Civic Media, this is Up North News Radio. Now, live from our Lake Minnesota studio, here's the founding editor of Up North News, Pat Brightlow.
Got a busy hour ahead here at 7:06 on Up North News Radio across the Civic Media Radio Network on this Wednesday, April 3rd. We'll be talking election results coming up in our homeroom segment at the bottom of the hour. The big referendum in Milwaukee appears to have passed. Other cities, it was a mixed bag, and we'll take a look at what the trends look like there with our friends from the Wisconsin Public Education Network. We'll be talking to Wisconsin Secretary of State Sarah Godlewski in a matter of moments, marking a year since she took that position in state government. But first, we want to welcome back our friend, meteorologist Brittany Merlot, to tell us all about the way the weather's looking today. I'm not sure where Brittany was the past couple days, but I'm going to assume she got caught up in this whirlwind that took her out and blew her right back into our lives. Brittany, we're glad to see you again, because I can't say this very often on the radio. It blows out there.
Oh, that's awesome. That is the best description for the weather today. You're right.
You see what I did there. Temps. Oh, you stop it, Greg Bach. The temperatures in the mid-30s all across Wisconsin. A warm-up is in sight, though. Yes.
I mean, kind of. It's not 70s or anything.
Well,
But,
no, but 50s would be nice. We can do that. Yes.
we're going to try. We're going to try for some 50s. I think a good chunk of the state, though, is going to get stuck with some upper 40s as our warm up. But it's all right. Here's what's happening today. We are mostly through a good chunk of the storm, but we're not done yet. Winter storm warning still in effect until 1 o'clock this afternoon. And a lot of those winter weather advisories still in effect until 1 o'clock as well. So if you're in the winter storm warning, basically anywhere from Menominee to Green Bay, down to Oshkosh, Wisconsin Rapids, and over to La Crosse area, you have another 2 to 5 inches left to fall still this morning. Not to mention northwest Wisconsin and western parts of the states are going to start to feel those strong wind gusts up to 40 miles per hour now. That is the same thing that the Green Bay and Fox Valley area had, and they have had plenty of power outages. So we are going to see some more power outages possible throughout the state this afternoon. And that is when everything changes after lunch. The snow could be mixing in with a little bit of rain in some spots. It'll start to taper off, turn to flurries by the evening, and then it kicks on out of here. But those winds stay strong all day today, and that snow does continue to fly until about lunch.
Oh my, but things will get better after that, but take it easy in the meantime. Let's see. It's Rob from Tigerton has no doubt chimed in. Yep, there it is. Snow in 33, wet, heavy snow. He measured 5.5 inches at 1:30 this morning before he went out on snow plowing jobs. He said, take it easy. It is heart attack snow. Brittany was right. She predicted a snowstorm after Easter. Apparently you remember some predictions you made a ways back.
Yes, I guess it scares a little bit of people, right?
You're not a sorceress. No, not by any stretch. You said it was going to snow, and it did.
Yay. I love the snow. Sorry, guys.
Not a worry.
We needed the precipitation, right? That drought is almost gone. Good news.
Time-released rain, as I like to call it. Thank you, Brittany. Have a wonderful day.
You too.
Right. Temperatures around the state right now, 36 here on Lake Wissota, 33 in Hayward, 29 in Park Falls. Wausau's at 34, Green Bay 34, La Crosse 33. It's 35 in Wisconsin Rapids, 34 in Oshkosh. Madison's in at 33. Waukesha is in at 30 degrees right now. All right, from a election results standpoint, again, you had Donald Trump winning on the Republican side, President Joe Biden on the Democratic side. A lot of people talking about the uncommitted vote on the Democratic side, people that didn't vote for Biden but voted, uncommitted. Yeah, that's one story. That's about 65,000 voters. But about double that amount of voters on the Republican side voted for anybody other than Donald Trump. So we just continue to see signs in the results, in the mayor's races, and the referendums that, Wisconsin remains very much a 50-50 state. And that's why it's as important as ever to protect your right to vote, to protect democracy, to have competency in our state government. And it's for that reason that we're joined by Wisconsin Secretary of State Sarah Godlewski to talk about all that and more 1 year into her tenure as Wisconsin Secretary of State. Sarah, good morning. I think I got you on mute there. Let's unmute you real quick. There we go. Oh,
all right.
Are you there
Good
now?
Good morning. I am.
There you go. Yeah, I hear you fine. How are you this morning?
Good morning. Well, when you and Brittany were talking about the awful weather, we did a press conference about Trump coming to town in Green Bay, and we're driving through that weather. So it was bad yesterday. But Wisconsin weather in April, right? I mean,
yep. You take what you take. And I wasn't even sure that there was going to be a Trump rally yesterday in Green Bay, but there was. And I actually want to start there before we get into your time as Secretary of State, because again, we're talking about defending democracy and the fairness and security that Wisconsin already has in its elections. And yet, this is something that Trump said in Green Bay yesterday. He talking again, claiming that he won Wisconsin, saying that at 10 o'clock election night, everyone was calling me to say, "Congratulations, sir." And he said, but then at 3:02 in the morning, a lot of dumps happened. A lot of bad things happened. No, the process worked as it always works. And Sarah, if I'm not mistaken, Republicans had a chance to fix this one flaw in our elections counting, and they chose not to.
No, that's exactly right. And look, the thing that we know about when it comes to Donald Trump is that he just runs a campaign that's based on lies. Something that I was actually talking about in Green Bay yesterday was he keeps talking about building a wall. Well, Joe Biden and the Democrats created a bipartisan border solution that he convinced people to then not support and walk away from. I mean, it's ridiculous. And so we are just going to continue, I think, to see like lies and misinformation from his campaign.
Oh, without a doubt we will, because again, whether we're talking about the economy, whether we're talking about migrants, election results, the whole deal over the weekend with Trans Visibility Day, coinciding on Easter, there's nothing that they won't lie about. And I'm just going to go ahead and say lie, because there's an article in the Journal Sentinel this morning that says Trump has sought for years to undermine the election in Wisconsin by pushing factually deficient conspiracy theories. Please stop writing factually deficient conspiracy theories and say lies, because they are. He knows that they're not true. So, Sarah, with a year under your belt as Secretary of State and speaking on behalf of clean, safe, competent elections in Wisconsin, knowing that those threats are out there tells me that you're not going to be bored between now and November. Talk a bit about what you've been doing your first year in office and what you'll be doing for the rest of 2024.
Well, and I think, Pat, let's maybe start with the democracy perspective, because, while our office does not run elections, one of the things that we said that we were going to stand up and make sure that we defended was our democracy and work on strengthening it. And one of the things that we've really worked hard on is elevating and building the awareness on the fake electors. We had the fake electors admit at the end of this 2023 that the falsified documents that they turned into my office, this certificate of votes, was actually indeed not a real document. And can we just overlook that and look the other way? And one of the individuals that signed that fake electric document for the election was Robert Spindell, serves on the Wisconsin Election Commission, is responsible for calling balls and strikes when it comes to our elections. And he knows better. And we've called on him to resign for the integrity of our elections, because he put personal preference above the will of the people with the 2020 election.
He did. And I think, again, it's so important that too many things in the Trump era, there's just so many things that need to be pointed out that sometimes something gets metaphorically swept under the rug, or at least is just out of sight, out of mind, because you're always moving on to the next thing. And that's where I think we need point people like you to look at certain things and keep them top of mind for, Wisconsin voters, not the least of which is a Wisconsin Elections Commission member serving as a fake elector, as an adjudicated liar by and large, who has had to recant and yet continues to say one of the other fake electors was running for a seat on the La Crosse County board yesterday. He lost, but he was continuing to say, well, I wasn't a fake elector. In other words, he's now lying about lying in terms of what they did, what their role was.
Right. Well, and I think, Pat, this wasn't just some little, white lie. This was literally a lie to overturn the 2020 election. And we are still seeing consequences of this lie today that Trump continues to perpetuate. So when I travel the state and I'm talking to these clerks, something that they are sharing with me is the harassment and the threats that they face because of these lies. And clerks are the cornerstones of our communities. They are kind of like a chief operating officer for your city or for your town or for your village. And yet they're facing these threats because of one of the responsibilities they have with elections. And Wisconsin has safe, secure elections thanks to the roles of our clerks. And yet this big lie is now, they are getting these threats and are harassed, and we're seeing clerks leave these professions because they don't want to deal with this. And it's an attack on these public servants that are doing really important work.
And their work is not going to be made any easier by yesterday's results on state constitutional amendments that address private grants, helping local governments to afford elections, and experts, consultants, volunteers, other helpers who make elections run more smoothly. It is, again, unfortunately, Sarah, a victory for right-wing talking points rather than the actual work that clerks are doing and the help that they need around Wisconsin.
Yeah, and that's, something that they continue to share over and over again is that it's not like there is we have a surplus here at the state. It's not going to local communities, to these clerks who need these additional resources. So how can we help support them? And so my office has been looking at ways, whether it is through the young people who can help support our clerks and be on the front lines of democracy. But that is one of the key initiatives that we have and will continue to work on, is supporting our clerks because they are the cornerstones.
We're going to continue our conversation with Wisconsin Secretary of State Sarah Godlewski coming up in just a bit. Just a reminder first that in sports, the Milwaukee Brewers, of course, won their home opener yesterday against the Minnesota Twins. The final score 3-2, and they will play again today, 12:10 first pitch. You'll catch it on several Civic Media Network stations, and the Bucks are at home against the Grizzlies at 6:30 tonight. Also on several stations across the Civic Media Radio Network. Back with more with Sarah Godlewski next. All right, about 10 seconds, then we're coming back. Again, Tony Orlando turns 80 years old today. We have that and so much more in our daily history lesson segment, about 6:50 every morning or so. We've had a shaky connection here with Wisconsin Secretary of State Sarah Godlewski. She's looking to join us again here in just a bit. So while we wait for her return, I just want to underscore a few things that we talked about with her in this previous segment, and that is the work that's going to have to be done to reach Wisconsin voters and make sure that they don't continue to fall for a lot of the sin out there that Trump is saying and that some of his backers are actually believing. And we'll maybe get into that in just a bit here. Sarah's back here right now. And Sarah, before the break, as we were talking about the elections and your office and the clerks, I want to get back to your office in particular. You've talked about, there was a backlog in terms of digitizing records, other work that needs to be done, even with a hostile legislature. I would imagine that you're rather hopeful that with new legislative maps, there might be a legislature next year that values the office as something more than a potential way to monkey with elections further.
Well, Pat, I appreciate you highlighting that, because when I first walked into office now a little over a year ago, it was a scene that I never thought I would see in state government. Literally, there were backlog of cases that needed to be authenticated. Our office is the only office that can do this work for the people of Wisconsin. We had boxes of records that needed to be organized and digitized. We were still using a seal from 1881 in our operations. And staff were using resources from home to to deliver for the people of the state. And what was so frustrating is it's not because these government workers don't care. It's because the legislature has been so extreme when it comes to their power grab that they've basically defunded this constitutional office at the detriment of Wisconsin. And these authentication services that we are doing, we did last year over 15,000 a year. This is for, a family that finally heard that they can adopt a child in Thailand, or a business. My first one was a cheese shop that finally got to sell their cheese overseas. They can't go to Minnesota or to Illinois to get those services. They have to come to our office.
Let me ask you about something that is going to at first strike people as rather arcane, but then you're going to see where I'm going here. And we're talking about the state seal, something that is affixed to all manner of official documents. And I think people associate that with, bygone days when people sealed things with, candle wax and a stamp and things like that. But I would make the case that in this era of artificial intelligence and deep fakes and things, that it's never been more valuable to have a Secretary of State's office that authenticates matters from the state as actually being from the state, especially when you have people who want to be elected and are willing to lie for a living.
No, that's exactly right. I think the state seal is Wisconsin's logo, but it's actually a lot more than that. It is the way, whether it is within other states or internationally, that documents can be validated and trusted when they see that state seal. And I think, Pat, one of the really good examples is we, of course, did not seal the fake elector certificate of votes because it wasn't a real document. They went to our office, but we did not seal it. And so it's our way of indicating that this can be trusted. One of our responsibilities, we also validate, for example, clerks' seals and signatures. And in this digital era, now more than ever, we are working on actually digitizing and securing that process. So it is something that we have and will be continuing to work on. We've addressed the backlog. We've cut our wait times in half, and we're really modernizing the office. But let's be real, we're doing that from pure grit. Pat, we're not able to do that because of the, funds that the legislature has helped provide. And I think what's also really frustrating is we fund our own office. So we don't take tax dollars. We are able to raise our own revenue from these cases to functionally operate, but yet we're not even allowed to even use our own revenue, just further illustrating how this is really political retribution and an attack on checks and balances.
Yeah, there's one article from Spectrum News that notes you're relying on an annual budget of $278,000 to keep everything up and running with just 2 full-time employees. I mean, that's the degree to which Republicans have scaled back that office and made it such a challenge for you. But you served as state treasurer previously. So what is it about you and your priorities and how you see things that has enabled you to now do for the Secretary of State's office what you did for the state treasurer's office in the face of partisan obstruction in both cases?
Well, it's funny, Pat, because I feel that the state treasurer's office might have been training for the Secretary of State's office, because when I walked to the state treasurer's office, it was the same thing from the Republicans. I mean, the wires were hanging down from the ceiling in the state treasurer's office. They cut off my Wi-Fi and gave me a pay-as-you-go flip phone as a way to run a constitutional office. And yet, I think something that I'm really proud of is just being scrappy and figuring out, how we can still get things done and be effective, because it's not that these offices don't have responsibilities. It's that they've basically been defunded at the detriment of Wisconsin. And how can we be creative to best do this work? And so for us, whether that is the work that we are doing to modernize the Secretary of State's office, right now, Pat, if you would want to get an authentication from our office, you'd have to either drive to us in Madison, which you are welcome. We would love to see you, or you have to use snail mail. And that's not the 21st century. And so we are working on almost having a very similar Amazon experience to the work we are doing with democracy and our clerks in civic engagement and civic education. We started a civics trivia program. To one of the things that I discovered when I went to my first National Association of Secretary of States is that because of our international component, a lot of secretaries of states are involved in trade and promoting their state internationally. And look, Wisconsin has incredible natural resources. We have great products, and being a part of that's a part of building our economy here in Wisconsin. And we are working on making that economic security part as well.
And given what we're seeing, what we have been seeing for, what passes for leadership in the legislature, the fact of the matter is, this state needs every quality ambassador that we can get on any given level, whether it's, a governor, U.S. senator, or in this case, Secretary of State, in an office that, again, has seen so much attempted monkey business. And by the way, not just in Wisconsin, other states like Iowa, the only state official is a Democrat. That's a Democrat as an auditor. So the legislature in Iowa is trying to neuter the auditor's office. But in the face of all of these threats, Sarah Godlewski remains indefatigable. And we appreciate so much that you're there, Sarah. And congratulations on your first year since being appointed to the office. And, keep in touch. Let us know how things are going for you today, Sarah. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
It was great to visit with you. And coming up next, we're going to talk about the election results around Wisconsin in our school districts. One especially noteworthy school referendum did pass, but others didn't. What does that mean for some of these small hometown school districts? We'll talk about that with our guests from the Wisconsin Public Education Network. And then Todd Alba, all ahead on Up North News Radio, live from Lake Wissota on the Civic Media Radio Network.
I got a
All right. Christian, Jenny, good morning.
Morning, Pat.
How are you?
Today's a good day for kids in the city of Milwaukee.
There you go. I appreciate that very much. Jenny, do I give you a title here with the Public Education Network?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. There you go. You've got it under your name right there. Okay. HOFSCHULTE, correct?
Yep.
Okay. There we go. Got that. And Christian, you're there.
Yep.
Let's see. Yep. There you are. Let's bring you guys up full for a second here. Yep. Y'all look good. You sound good. All right. I'm going to tuck you back here behind the commercial slide. We've got just under 3 more minutes left in this break.
Okay.
And then I'll just say a couple of promotional words and then I'll bring you guys in. All right. In fact, I'm going to tuck you back into the waiting room here just so you don't have to worry about making noise and everything, but I'll pop you back up when the segment gets started. Okay.
Sounds good.
All right. See you soon. Don't forget, you can always sign up for the daily newsletter that we put together over at Up North News, a separate entity from Civic Media. Head to upnorthnewswi.com, click newsletter in the banner on top of our homepage, and get what Christina Laurie puts together every day, from the news and stories about people, places, events, food, and whatnot that we do all across Wisconsin. And here on Up North News Radio, every Wednesday, we have a segment called Homeroom, where we look at the value of public education, the threats to public education, and the opportunities, trends, people. And this time around, we're going to be talking all about the election results that took place in nearly 100 referendum questions around the state with our friends Christian Phelps and Jenny Hofschild from the Wisconsin Public Education Network. Jenny, Christian, good morning.
Morning, Pat.
Jenny, I think I swung and missed and took a whiff on your last name there. Say it for me again.
Hofschild, just say it all.
Hofschild, say it all. It's all right there, like it sounds. Let's start with the big one, of course, because the referendum for the Milwaukee public school system gained a lot of attention, of course. Big district, a lot of big support, a lot of big opposition from folks tied to big business or Republican concerns. Jenny, how did that all shake out in the end?
At the Wisconsin Public Education Network, we always say a referendum only needs 50% plus one. And last night we got 50% plus 1,720 in the Milwaukee. So we're pretty proud of the community showing up. You are correct that business interests and some Republicans took this opportunity to really come hard at MPS and pour a lot of money into this race. And they came up short.
Well, I'll tell you what, to hear that was the vote margin, Greg told us at the top of the show that a county board race near him in the Kenosha area was decided by one vote. I just noticed in the last break that a seat on the Eau Claire County Board was decided by about 15 votes. And so we know, and we've seen school referendums pass or fail by, again, just a handful of votes. Christian, what does that say about, the effort in Milwaukee that, it was victorious by such a narrow but critical margin?
Well, I think that I'm not personally very surprised that it was close, because Milwaukee isn't the only place around Wisconsin where we saw a lot of organization in opposition to referenda by folks who really kind of showed their cards this time around and made it clear that the survival of a strong and equitable public school system actually isn't important to them, and that they would rather see a privatization movement really take hold. And so in the districts like Milwaukee, where the supporters of public education really got mobilized and volunteered time that they barely have and resources that they might have rather spent doing other things to actually run a successful pro-public education campaign and mobilize the majority of Wisconsin that loves and supports their public schools. That's what it takes. And so a lot of the referenda that passed, like Milwaukee's, were really by those narrow margins, because that's what was necessary in order to get the word out and help voters understand what was at stake for local kids. Yeah. Taxpayers are kind of weary right now, and I can't blame them for that. So there was a lot of education to be done and a lot of mobilization.
Right. And a lot of people that wanted to take out those frustrations on the people who were seeking funds rather than on the legislature, which has been choking off funds from public education. But that, again, is what leads to a mixed bag. Jenny, are you able, from the results you've seen, to kind of give us a summary of what the trends were like out there? I mean, I only know the things closer to home here in Chippewa Falls. It passed, but in places like Cadott and Stanley Boyd, they were defeated in one case by an 80-20 margin. Granted, we're only talking about a few hundred voters total, but still a real mixed bag. What's your interpretation of what you've seen so far?
Well, it's a real mixed bag, but in those communities, those are the voters who turned out, right? So those are the votes that count. And in smaller communities, you're going to have smaller vote totals, and those margins are going to be close. I know Bristol's District 1 referendum, the last I checked, was a loss for that community by just 10 votes.
Wow.
Yeah. What's really shocking to me, and not shocking to me if you've been following this for a while, is that the legislature, they adjourned. And they are not here or around to be held accountable to their persistence in defunding and under-resourcing our public schools across the whole state. And people are weary because the tenor of politics is ugly right now, and it continues to be a hard road to sow. And at the forefront of these fights now have become our local school district fights. So it's not a unique situation to the southern part of the state, as you were saying. It looks, we're seeing about, I don't know, Christian and I were running the spreadsheet a little bit this morning. About 50% of the districts that we supported, a little over, that reached out to us for resources and ideas and connection, passed last night. But we're still tracking some of those totals.
Yeah, they're still coming in, and I'm looking at just from a civic media newsroom tracking standpoint, as of very early this morning, you had 55 that appeared to have passed, 35 that appear to have failed, with some that were still unknown or pending. And again, those numbers are not set in stone yet. But Christian, for the ones where they do fail, the question becomes, what's next? What is, from a general standpoint, what are we likely to see happen in some of these communities where the referendums weren't successful?
Well, generally speaking, voters, I think, can expect to see another referendum in a lot of those districts pretty soon, in some cases even later this calendar year, because the needs of kids don't change, and the power of each dollar spent in an economy that has inflated so much, and in districts where the funding from the state has fallen behind inflation for 15 going on 16 consecutive years, that doesn't change. And so the reality is that kids aren't going to be able to get what they deserve from their public school districts. The districts aren't going to be able to continue to provide the, sort of robust and locally unique programming with excellent and compensated staff and modern resources and facilities without more money. And I think that a lot of people learn through a referendum effort, either by being part of the campaign or just by hearing about it as a supporter of public education or a parent or an educator, really what school finance does look like in Wisconsin. I mean, it's a complex thing, and if you're not researching it, there's really no way that you would understand it. But when it hits home in your local school district, a lot of time you learn that the state has been just walking away from its responsibility to your local public schools. And in some cases, those people who get mobilized through a referendum become the strongest advocates for doing better at the state level. So I think there's going to be maybe more of a tie to local funding issues and the importance of voting up and down the ballot in the fall for the sake of local kids and a better future, so that this doesn't have to keep happening. But also in a lot of districts, there's going to be another referendum, and hopefully situations where the community has a little bit more information going into that campaign the next time around than they did this time around, and more of an ability to make it work, because the school year is going to end in May or June, and those kids are going to be 1 year older. We need to act now and make sure that they don't have to go through their entire public school experience getting under-resourced and underfunded.
Right. And Jenny, when we talk about how so much of this is, it's a matter of communicating a very complex school funding system. I remember the same thing like a generation ago, saying if we could explain, milk prices to people, we could do a lot of good for Wisconsin farmers. It was such a convoluted system. And the same is being said now about schools. And you lead to these ultra thin margins. I'm looking here at like North Lake passed by 41 votes. The one in Luck passed by 16 votes. I see the one that you were talking about. Bristol failed by 10 votes. Richland passed by 12 votes. Seymour passed by just 32 votes. The communication aspect of this, again, moving forward to what will undoubtedly be the next referendums, are there any particular lessons that you can take away from that, either in terms of what the messaging is or simply how hard you have to work at messaging if the margins are always going to be this close?
Yeah, Pat, thanks for that question. And like I said, we need 50% plus one. So it's every door knocked, every person you talk to, every friend you convince to come to the polls, and providing people factual information in order to tell the story about our public schools and to explain, public school financing in a nutshell. I spent a lot of time in the city giving presentations to parent groups and community groups since the February referendums, just talking about breaking it down, explaining how it works, how the budget process works in the state. There was a lot of misinformation being conveyed that Milwaukee didn't care, or that or that people weren't fighting for funding for our schools up until the referenda. Like this was like the thing they decided to show up to do. And just telling that story about how school districts have been banding together. It used to be MPS rather alone, and, rural schools joined the coalitions. Now we see more suburban superintendents and communities coming out to advocate for funding for their schools. And I tell people all the time, human beings wrote our school finance policy, and human beings with the appropriate will can write better school funding policy for the state of Wisconsin. So I'm just telling the story about the long haul, like Christian was saying, going on 16 years of flat funding for our public schools, and even taking them back and doing some bullet points, starting with revenue limits and how those pitchers of water fill back and forth. But Christian is also correct that every time we have a referendum, it enlightens people to the situation. It gets them to be paying attention to what's happening at the State House. you know, they're on vacation right now, campaigning, and our communities are going to be fighting for their public schools.
Yeah, absolutely. It just does not help when the legislature gives itself a 9 to 10 month paid vacation. Let me ask what might be a tougher question on the issue of transparency, only because I'm going to editorialize in asking the question. But in Milwaukee especially, there was this talking point of, well, they're not telling us where the money is going to go. And my thought about that is, well, look, I think you're not really that concerned with that, because if they told you where every dollar was going, if you really wanted to micromanage, the light bill, and the gas bill for the school buses and everything, if that's what you mean, it's virtually impossible to give that. So Christian, when people say we want transparency in these school referendum numbers, I'm giving obviously extreme examples of extreme micromanagement, but how do you evaluate how transparent you can be with a school referendum to voters, rather than get right down to the dollar level? Do they just need to know that it's general education? Do they need to know it's the price of gas for the buses? Or, what works with the voters?
I've found that micromanaging the ins and outs of every dollar that hasn't even been raised, much less spent yet, is really a tactic of the campaigners who go into it opposed to a referendum and intent upon making other people oppose the referendum. The average rank and file sort of voter, parent, community member, grandparent, retired educator does not have any interest in poring over spreadsheets to check on light bills, but they do want transparency and accountability for their local public schools. And so what it really becomes kind of a messaging race to make sure that the people who support the referendum and support the public school district reach voters faster than the nitpicking sort of tactics of the opposition campaign. Most people want to know, how can I make it easier for students to learn and teachers to teach in my local school district? Because people want that to be the case. And if voting yes on a referendum for operations to make sure that high quality teachers can be retained or hired, or on a capital referendum to modernize the building or close a leaky roof or build a new athletic facility, is the way to make it easier for students to learn and teachers to teach, public school champions from all across Wisconsin and communities of very, very different political sort of environments are happy to do that when they have that information. I'll also just add, if transparency and accountability is the goal, I share that goal, and local public school districts share that goal. They put out plans for the referendum if it passes or fails. Sometimes the dollar amounts come in and some have to pay a light bill differently or whatever than anticipated. But the least transparent and accountable way to run an education system is to send money to a private system that belongs to taxpayers and just say goodbye to it and have no oversight over those dollars. That's what happens in the voucher system. And those voucher dollars come right off the top of local public school districts' budgets all across the state, and in many cases are responsible for the referenda in the first place. And so I can't not point out the irony in demanding accountability and transparency from the districts that are actually being chokeholded by the voucher system.
We appreciate that and the background so much. Christian Phelps, Jenny Hofschulte from the Wisconsin Public Education Network. Thank you so much for helping summarize yesterday's events, and we'll talk again soon.
Thank you.
When we come back, Todd Alba takes us more around his tour of Wisconsin next. You're up north. All right, we are clear. Christian, Jenny, thank you so much.
Thanks, Pat.
Thanks, Pat. Have a great day.
Yep, you too. Ladies and gentlemen, what you're seeing now on your screen is Todd Alba trying to figure out where is the best Wi-Fi spot. Okay.
Pretty much.
For what in November? Thursday on Up North News Radio, some big news in our Women Win Wisconsin segment. I was going to say, you want to tilt up, tilt down, sit cross-legged on the floor, whatever
I'll
works.
just do this. There.
Okay.
I'll leave it alone.
All right, about 10 seconds.
dark as shame, darling, dark as shame.
We thought we'd bring this back again for Wayne Newton's 82nd birthday, but also because our own Ferris Bueller, Todd Alba, joins us now. Once again, not where he's supposed to be. He's not skipping class. He's skipping the studio in Madison. And much like Ferris Bueller was gallivanting around Chicagoland, Todd is gallivanting. I want the bell for the old man word there, Greg. He's gallivanting around Wisconsin. Where in the world is Todd Alba now?
From the beautiful Hampton Inn in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, down the road from Lake Wissota, we're here this morning. Good morning, Pat. Good morning, Greg. And it's not so much I'm gallivanting. I'm just trying to get a little bit of the Riz.
A little bit of what?
The Riz. That's the new word the kids are using. The Riz. You know, a little bit of charisma. I'm trying to catch some charisma. The Riz.
Is there an opposite of the old man bell?
Oh, Todd, never do that again. You're not making any of us middle-aged guys look good with that.
These are things you learned from your high school age niece at Easter.
Oh, okay.
Uncle Todd, you got to get you want to be more Riz.
Or that niece is back at school going, check out the made-up word I convinced my uncle to start saying.
No, he's right. The Riz is a word that the kids are saying.
Mm-hmm.
I just didn't expect it to come out of Todd's face.
And yet, here we are.
I have nothing if not having my finger on the pulse of the youth.
That's it. That's it. Keep those fingers elsewhere. So you came up with this nice idea to once again tour the Civic Media Radio empire, and so you've been in Richland Center and then La Crosse before today's Chippewa Valley visit, right?
Yes, that's exactly. Started at Richland Center. We were at Culver's all day for the show. It was fantastic. Kicking off their new
You just
bacon.
wanted to get free bacon.
I was going to say, spending all day at Culver's?
Civic media managers and higher ups and gods. I want free bacon too, and I'll travel anywhere for it.
The bacon was free to everybody, by the way. We paid for our lunch, we paid for our custard, and we just appreciate the opportunity. And it was a lot of fun. And then yesterday we were supposed to be at UW La Crosse, but apparently there was a cooking show going on, so we couldn't film it there. So we filmed it at the Radisson Hotel. And that was fine. They had the Mississippi River right behind us, so that was great. Mm-hmm. And talked to Anthony Chagowski, the poli-sci professor there at UW La Crosse. Today we're at UW Eau Claire. We're going to have the great Pat Kreitlow on the show. Going to have the Chancellor Schmidt from Eau Claire, and also Mike Johnson, the superintendent of Eau Claire Public Schools, is going to be on as well. Big education show. Tomorrow we're in Stevens Point, and Friday we end up in Green Bay.
My goodness, that's just so impressive. And what kind of a response are you getting from folks out there? Are they talking politics with you because of the nature of the show? Are they looking to just find out more about civic media?
A little bit of both. Sage Weil, our owner, was stopped by our evening event in Richland Center. So during noon to 2, we're doing the show at the locations I said. And then in the evening, we're just having a meet and greet. And people can stop on down to Dooley's downtown Eau Claire tonight between 6 and 7:30. And you can meet Pat Kreitlow, who is going to be there, as well as Trigby Olson, senior advisor at the Lincoln Project, a River Falls native, and also an UW Eau Claire alum. So he's doing the whole tour with us as well. And we're fine. Yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of politics, but we're calling this the What Makes Wisconsin Great Beer, Cheese, and Radio Tour. We were talking to our bartender last night, and a early 20-year-old guy, Braden, and he said, I think it's so cool, you guys, because they had the Brewers game on. He goes, you're absolutely right. I mean, if people spent more time talking about the Brewers and about good beer, I think people get along better. So I think there's that commonality. I know you talked to the Wisconsin Public Education Network folks last segment, and I think there's a lot of truth to, public education is one of those things that does bind our communities. And I think the more we can find commonality, the better off we are.
Absolutely. And so we've got Chris on Facebook talking about, her gratitude that you're coming to Eau Claire, and she's getting people motivated to come out and see you. Of course, Tony up in Hayward reminds us that the Todd father is always discovering what makes Wisconsin great. And of course, you had me at Water Street. So to join you at Dooley's on 5th and Water this evening, 6 o'clock, you said?
6 o'clock until 7:30. We are buying everyone their first round of beer or soda and cheese curds. So if you want a beer and cheese curds and hang out with Pat Kreitlow, Trigby Olson, and me, come on down to Dooley's tonight in Eau Claire.
We would love to see you doing that. A common theme from the show today, looking at the election results, wasn't just the mixed bag of results, but also that there is still a lot of work to do to reach people who continue to think that, snake oil, tastes like Coca-Cola or some other, delicious beverage. And that snake oil includes, Trump again claiming that he won Wisconsin 4 years ago, that he didn't, that, migrants are animals and not human, that the economy is bad when every indication says otherwise. And you even see it in public polling where people say, well, I think the economy overall is bad, but my economy is good. There is just such well, like I said at the top of the show, there's a lot of work to do between now and November 5th.
I think one of the personally for me to see Mayor Katie Rosenberg in Wausau lose in a close election, because I just think that Mayor Rosenberg, it's my opinion that she's everything you want, not just in a mayor but in any elected official. And to your point, Pat, I think it was a case of where lies and a lot of money. Unfortunately, sometimes it convinces people to vote against their own best interests. And so I think that's why it's important for us to double down on our work to spread the truth. I know you do it in your show. We do it in ours. Civic Media is out there. And facts do matter. And I really encourage people to continue to seek out the truth, because you don't want to vote against your best interests. And I'm sure Mayor Rosenberg will land on her feet. But I think that Wausau this morning is a little bit worse off for having voted her out last night.
Oh, without a doubt. But again, it tells you about the power of the outside groups that came in. They knew that Katie was a rising star in progressive circles. And so you have to come after her with everything you've got from the get-go, because if she were to have won a second term, of course, there would have been talk about, future higher offices for her. And so, they look to target everything. They threw the kitchen sink at her. And it worked this time around. And she noted last night that she's going to take some time off and think about things. I know that feeling very well.
Right.
But
so do I.
but we are far worse off as a state if people just walk away all the time after a bad outcome. Sometimes they end up as radio talk show hosts and can do public good that way. So we're going to try to do that ourselves on Mr. Todd's show coming up at noon, and at Dooley's Pub on Water Street this evening. Todd Alba, thank you so much. I'll see you a little later.
Appreciate you guys. Have a wonderful day.
Absolutely. Greg will be back with Jane Matnair on air coming up at 10 a.m. Yes. Boy, somebody's got to catch up on the sleep if he's forgetting the basic show schedule. But I'll be back here at, let's see, is it 6 a.m.? Yeah, it's still going to be 6 a.m. tomorrow when we do this. So enjoy the rest of your Wednesday. We'll see you back here 6 a.m. tomorrow for Up North News Radio, live on the Civic Media Radio Network.